Support comes from Thomas Nelson Community College, now becoming Virginia Peninsula Community College, the first choice to start a bachelor's degree since tuition is one-third the cost of four-year schools. More at tncc.edu.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, partnering with donors from all walks of life to improve southeastern Virginia through grants, scholarships, and leadership initiatives. Learn more at hamptonroadscf.org.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. This time next week, hopefully you are preparing the finishing touches of your Thanksgiving dinner, or perhaps already entertaining out-of-town guests, or re-engaging in holiday rituals that may have gone by the wayside during the COVID lockdown. Are you a bit rusty in your entertaining skills? What about your manners as we gather even though the pandemic continues? Answers to your entertainment and etiquette questions from Mia Byrd with Byrdhouse Creatives and Monica Edwards with Morehead Manor Bed and Breakfast. Stay tuned. Another View is next after this news from NPR and WHRV News.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. We've got two outstanding professionals to talk to us all about entertaining and etiquette as we go into the holiday season. But before I bring them on, let me tell you a couple of things that are going on that may be of interest to you. So Andrew Shannon, who is the founder and event organizer of the annual Feeding 5,000 Thanksgiving Harvest and Community Celebration, is inviting all Virginians to attend and participate in a delicious meal in Newport News this coming Saturday. The event is going to be held at New Beach Grove Baptist Church, and it takes place from noon until 2 p.m. on Saturday the 20th, and it is... the catering will be handled by Roger and Peggy Winston, owners of Queensway Soul Cafe and Chickasee Restaurant, and they're going to serve turkey and chicken, mashed potatoes, yams, corn, rice, green beans, macaroni and cheese, cranberry sauce, stuffing, dressing, gravy, rolls, and assorted desserts. And it is open to everyone. You don't need to register. You don't need to sign up. You just need to come. Your food will be given to you in individual to-go boxes, and there'll also be music. There'll be celebrities and politicians and community leaders and all kinds of folks that are coming out. So that is Saturday, noon to 2 at New Beach Grove Baptist Church in Newport News. And the former news director here at WHRO News, Beck Feldhouse Adams, who is now with 89.3 WFPL News in Louisville, which is another NPR station. She sent us some information that she thought you, our Another View audience, might be interested in. On Monday, November 22nd at 6 p.m., they are doing a live virtual Facebook conversation called My Beautiful Black Hair, a conversation with St. Clair Dietrich Jules. Now, she is an author, and that is the name of her book, My Beautiful Black Hair, 101 Natural Hair Stories. And race and equity reporter Yasmin Yuma will hold a virtual conversation with the author, along with social justice advocate Ashante Scott and Louisville Public Media's Ashley Clark about standing up in the face of discrimination and embracing their natural hair. So you can go to Facebook and look under events, and this is a live conversation on Facebook on Monday, November 22nd at 6 p.m. So just some things that are going on as we enter into the holiday season. And it is the holidays, and this year, guess what? We're not in COVID lockdown, which means we can gather again with family and friends. So are you hosting a holiday gathering? What are some must-haves to make your event special? And what about your manners? Do you wear a mask at the gathering? How about that age-old question of how to gracefully ignore Uncle Joe when he's had just a bit too much wine? We've got two etiquette and hospitality experts, Ms. Mia Byrd, founder and creative director of Byrdhouse Creatives. She can turn any space into a wonderland. Hi, Mia. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining us today. And Monica Edwards, owner and innkeeper for Morehouse Manor Bed and Breakfast, featured in the Washington Post among other national publications. It's the place where elegance, excitement, and hospitality meet. Hello, Monica. How you doing?
Good afternoon, Barbara. Thank you for having me.
You're a staple here on Another View now, so we really appreciate you being with us. So I'm going to ask this question of both of you because I know that your work intertwines because both of you are professional event planners, entertainment experts, etiquette experts, and so we're just going to have a great conversation about all of this. So the first question is, no matter how large, small, formal, informal, each of you name 3 most important things you think that everyone must consider as you start to plan for your holiday gathering. So this is coming from the host perspective. And Mia, I'll start with you.
Sure. So the first thing is your menu and what you're going to serve, your bar, and a theme. I think it's really great to have a theme during the holiday for a holiday party, just so people know what to wear, people know what to bring. It gets people a little bit excited. So those are my 3 things: bar, food, and theme.
Okay. And Monica, what would your 3 things be?
Well, I'll piggyback on what Mia said. Definitely, you need to plan your menu. Given COVID, I think that you need to take in consideration the guests that you're inviting. Are you going to require them to be vaccinated or unvaccinated, or how are you going to handle if they're unvaccinated people that you're inviting? And also take in consideration dietary restrictions of some of the people that are coming to the event these days.
And I was going to ask you about all of those things. So I find it very curious that neither one of you said your guest list as the first thing to think about. How important is that in Mia in terms of especially deciding what your theme is going to be?
Sure. So right now, just because while we're not in lockdown, COVID does still exist, I think that the guest list is important. Minimizing the guest list. I usually host a Holly Jolly every year. I invite 100 people and 70 show up. I think paring it back to make sure everyone is comfortable so that people, whether they are vaccinated and will wear or would love to come but would be more comfortable with a lot less people in the room. I think paring down that guest list and thinking about that is extremely important, definitely.
Okay. So, Monica, is it proper etiquette to either require in the invitation that someone be vaccinated or not? Is it okay to ask if people are vaccinated? How do you handle that?
Well, I think if you're going to send out like a electronic invitation or any type of invite, you can basically address it there as to what you expect of your guest versus having people show up at the last minute and not have masks or anything such as that.
So would you expect people to wear a mask if it's an indoor event?
Like Mia said, it just depends. For me, it depends upon the size of the event. I'm thinking for us personally here, we're just basically going to be with family and friends, and those family and friends are going to be people that we have been hanging out with for, the last couple of months or so. It's not going to be strangers and things like that. I think if you add a person to the mix that is an outsider, then that may bring for concern for someone. But I think most of the people that you know intimately, you have an idea of what their vaccination status is.
So, Mia, when you're thinking about the theme, I'm actually, so it needs to be more specific than just a holiday theme. Is that right?
It doesn't have to be. I think that adds a layer of just excitement and fun for people. I know when I plan my party, it helps with some of the decorations and decor and the concept. It's something I enjoy. It can just be a holiday party. I think adding that layer is fun. The holiday party before COVID, we did a Nightmare Before Christmas theme. So some people came dressed as like the ghost of Christmas past. It's just another fun layer to add. But I think a holiday party is always a great theme in general. But I think adding another layer could be interesting.
How do you decide? Is it something that is more indicative of your personality, or is it just you pick something out of a book? How do you decide what you want your theme to be?
Usually it's indicative of my personality, something fun and quirky where people can get dressed up either in costume or have a jumping off point for something fun to wear, because you can always wear your beautiful velvet red holiday dress, but sometimes people want to do a little bit more. I just think it adds, it's more my personality, I think, where I insert the theme.
So decorating can be fun or it can be intimidating. So when when someone approaches Byrdhouse Creatives, what's your thought process? How do you approach how you're going to decorate for that person?
So when someone approaches us, we usually, the first question is, what is your goal? Are you wanting something more traditional? Are you wanting something a little bit more fun, vibrant? Do you want us to come up with a theme? Kind of getting a sense of what the client's vision is. And if they don't have one and they let us run with it, then we'll look at some new and interesting fun ideas, large holiday balls, things that we can actually fabricate ourselves. So usually we just start with what their first goal is, and we'll run from there.
Are there some tricks of the trade in terms of some inexpensive but effective ways to decorate regardless of what your theme is? If you're just wanting to decorate because you're having people over, are there some things you can share?
Absolutely. So we have a great area here in Virginia where we have lots of different types of trees that you can forage from, junipers and pine. And I think that's one of the most inexpensive ways to create the holiday mood. You can snip from your yard. A lot of places will allow you to come and clip and trim. So holiday clippings like junipers and pine, those are a great way. You can also incorporate fruit, pomegranates, grapes, things like that, if you're doing a tablescape, a dinner for a small group of people, you can utilize that, and then it can be washed and go back into your fridge, and you can eat it later. For one of my favorites for Thanksgiving is the different shades of pumpkins, the greens and the whites and the speckled. They're called Cinderella pumpkins. Putting those on the table with some candles, those are some of the most inexpensive ways to decorate and get a really good table design or a concept without having to go overboard.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. What are your questions about entertaining as we all kind of come out of the lockdown of COVID, but also being very safe and maintaining that safety? 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So, Monica, if you were going to limit your event and only have a certain amount of people there, especially if you're doing a sit-down dinner, and someone shows up with an unexpected guest, what is the best way to handle that?
Well, I would say graciously, just as I was always taught, just set another place setting at the table. But I think as a guest, etiquette would have it that if you're going to show up with someone else, that you should alert your host that there's going to be an additional person, because typically people set the table for formal events such as Thanksgiving dinner, and you would just need to have a plate for that person or a place setting so that the person wouldn't feel as though they were an outsider.
And then that they were intruding. So, but what if, because of COVID, particularly if you've already screened everyone else? I mean, is it improper to say to them, I'm sorry, I don't know you and I don't know what your status is and I'm not comfortable? Or do you just suck it up and let them come in?
Again, it has a lot to do with how well your guests know you. Okay. I don't think that most people would show up with, most responsible people, I should say, won't just show up with someone that they are not comfortable with, that if they know you well enough, they're just not going to show up with that person and say, hey, here's he's Junebug. I'm not. I just picked him up on the corner. He looked like he needed Thanksgiving dinner. But then you as a host really can make that decision. He make it to sit at the children's table out on the porch, or she.
Oh my goodness, yeah, that is, I think it becomes a little bit more complicated because before it used to be just everybody drop by. There were lots of homes where you just say, "Come on by," we're all going to be there all day long. And I'm wondering if a lot of hosts and hostesses out there are saying to themselves, maybe we need to control this a little bit more.
I would say yes. I think that most people are socializing with the people that they have built their bubble around, and so they pretty much know the vaccination status of their friends and family members. And because of COVID, I mean, that's a opening topic these days, especially when you're planning events. Who's vaccinated, who's not, and how are you going to handle that situation? I have friends who were not keen on being vaccinated, but their loved ones told them if they're planning on joining in any of holiday activities, that they're going to have to be vaccinated. Yeah. And so that has forced them to bite the bullet and become vaccinated.
And I mean, particularly, with all families and particularly within the African American community, also you have people from all different generations. And so if you're going to have elderly people, for example, who may be more immunocompromised and so forth, you've got to watch out for your family members too. It's up. Hello? Did we lose someone? Okay, Mia, are you still there with us? Okay. I am. Monica, are you still there? Okay, we'll see if we can get Monica back. In the meantime, let's see. I'm looking at question here from our Facebook page. So Mia, when you are decorating and you're setting your table, is color, how important is it in terms of color, in terms of variety? I'm just trying to get a sense of if you're not a normal person who does what you do for a living, how you can be as creative as possible without overdoing it, because sometimes it can come across as being gaudy as opposed to being pretty,
Sure. So I think if you feel like you're not necessarily someone who immediately can create something, I think starting with a color you mentioned is the best, is a really good starting place. Like, do you want the colors to be the reds of the holiday season? Do you want it to be more natural and neutral and rustic and kind of those warm browns and golds and coppers? Starting with a color and going from there is helpful. And I think to avoid it being gaudy or having too many components on the table, the old adage of right before you walk out of the house, take one piece of jewelry off. If you look at the table, take that one thing off that you might not need. I tend to put as much on the table as I can to the point where the food can't go on the table because the flowers, it's just like, let's put flowers and glassware and china and, let's add that too. And then you think, where are you going to put the food? Oh, the food doesn't matter. The table looks pretty. But I think that taking that last thing off, that if you feel like you've been putting it on, taking it off, just take it off. But just to avoid it being gaudy, I think starting with that color palette and then not adding too many things is helpful.
Sometimes you see people when they're decorating externally as well as internally. They just have lights everywhere and they have so much. Is there such a thing as too much?
There is a such thing as too much, in my opinion. It's the holiday season, so I'll never say that you need to take down some of those holiday decorations. It's the jolliest time of year for most people, for some people. But I think that, there is a such thing as too much. You don't need candles and flowers and ornaments and napkins and everything on the table at once. I think, coming up with one idea and sticking to that. Do you want lights on the table? Do you want flowers? Like coming up with that one concept and then just trying to streamline that, I think, is helpful.
It works better than everything else. So we've got a question from Facebook. Monica, I'm going to throw this one to you. This is from Lynn in Chesapeake. She says, if you're an invited guest and your host says, just bring yourself, what should you really show up with? In other words, should you bring a gift?
You can always bring a bottle of wine or something that will add to the occasion.
Okay. So you should.
Because we know that not everyone is a good cook, so you can be safe if you bring a carbonated beverage or a bottle of wine.
But you should show up with something. You should not show up empty-handed.
I would say so, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then Kevin from Norfolk wants to know, how do you avoid the political conversation when you see things heading in that direction? He said last year it got ugly. So apparently he had a problem last year. How do you steer that conversation? How do you change it? I'll ask that to both of you.
I would say you can just interject with another topic and move it on. And most people should follow suit. Typically, they wait. Most in normal situations, they leave that to the host to steer the conversation in a different direction.
Mm-hmm. And Mia, what do you think?
The same way, if the host isn't around, if I try to avoid that type of conversation, I'll interject with a one-liner that is kind of lighthearted and people will laugh and then we'll change the subject. That's usually what I try to do.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. Are you planning a Thanksgiving gathering or other gathering during the holidays, and you have some questions about how to decorate or what to serve or the proverbial which fork do I use? Give us a call and let's talk about it. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So let's talk about Uncle Joe, who drinks too much. Do you first of all, legally, you do have a responsibility, do you not, Monica, in terms of making sure that your guests leave your home safely? And if they've had too much to drink, are you responsible for calling an Uber, or what are you responsible for as a host?
I don't know legally what your responsibility is because it's a private situation, but I would hope that your moral compass would kick in, and maybe you would, if not drive, have someone in the group drive Uncle Joe home, maybe call an Uber, or because I don't necessarily know that you would want to put, depending upon how belligerent Uncle Joe may be, you might not want the responsibility of putting him in an Uber or a Lyft, but and have that on your account. But I would just say, have him have a nap or, have someone take him home.
Yeah. And allow him to take that nap.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So how are you guys handling things now that we're back out in public and so forth? And I'm thinking about work events, because so many people have been working virtually and haven't seen each other in almost a year or just getting together recently. And people like to hug, but not everybody's comfortable with hugging. So is it up to you as an individual to set your boundary? And how should you handle that? Mia, I'm going to come to you first because, I know young people, y'all are just, all about life. Let's just go and have fun and let's do this thing. But I mean, is it fist bump? Is it elbow? Is it, I'm going to hug you anyway? How do you handle that?
So, with work functions, indoors, I'm putting a mask back on, although I'm fully vaccinated and I have my booster. I am still wearing masks indoors. I have a lot of outdoor events. I don't wear them outside. When it comes to friends and gatherings, I know my friends and what their situations are and where they've been. So I'll hug some of my closer friends who I know are a little bit more responsible with their interactions. And then other people, I just say hey and wave, and it's great to see you. But I think, my circle is pretty much similar to me, where they still know it exists, but they still are pretty responsible with their interactions as well.
And doing what they're supposed to do. What about you, Monica?
Yeah.
Well, given the fact that here at the B&B, we're here at our home and the B&B most of the time, if we're just operating around the inn, whatever makes the guests feel comfortable, I have signage on the door that basically say you have to enter with a mask because that's currently what the mandate is. And I let people decide whether or not they want to wear a mask. As far as hugging or touching another person, my guests sometimes want to hug, and just depends upon how I feel about that. I may fist bump them or I may give them a hug, depending upon how well I know them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 440-2665, 1-800-940-2240. If you're just joining us, we're talking about entertaining and etiquette during the holidays with Mia Byrd, founder and creative director of Byrdhouse Creatives, and Monica Edwards, owner and innkeeper, Morehouse Manor Bed and Breakfast. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So I'm going to ask a personal question to both of you. What is an example of an etiquette or a entertaining faux pas that has happened to you personally, and how did you overcome it? Who wants to start?
As the host, or did I?
Either way,
or did I have a faux pas?
Either as a host or if you had a faux pas at an event, and how did you overcome it?
I think the biggest faux pas I've ever had is someone not RSVPing for a seated dinner, and it was a husband and wife, and they didn't RSVP, and apparently they are notorious. They always show up. They will always show up, and they will never RSVP. And so, like Monica said earlier, you just set another place. I always spread guests out more, even before COVID, so that they have more space to eat and it's more comfortable. And in case an extra person or two shows up, you have space to fit them in. So we just set another place setting and said, we're so glad you could join us, and kept it moving. And then, that was probably the biggest one I've ever had.
Well, but that also goes to a certain point too, which means that you always must provide more food than you think you need. Is that correct? Because otherwise,
right. Generally, a caterer will bring a couple of extra meals, but if you're providing the food and you're doing everything yourself, just having a little bit of extra food on hand is always an ideal situation, so you don't run out. It's better to have too much than not enough.
Yeah. What about you, Monica? Any faux pas that you had to overcome, and how did you do it?
I off the top of my head, I can't think of anything. I can only imagine, people showing up with not enough, you're preparing food for 8 and maybe someone brings extra people, and especially if they have dietary restrictions that you were not prepared for.
Yeah.
If the person was a vegan and no one told you that there was going to be a vegan present, then we would have to scramble and look in the refrigerator to see if we had any extra vegetables that didn't have any meat seasoning in them. Well,
but that actually brings up a good point. As a host, how far are you supposed to go in terms of providing what I guess a good way to describe it is alternative dietary options? Are you supposed to screen each of your guests to find out if they have dietary restrictions, or do you just fix what you're going to fix? And if that's the case, should they bring their own? How does that work?
Well, I would say, again, as a host, most people know something about the people they are inviting. Now, if you're a person, a friend or family member has decided to move from being a regular eater to a vegan diet or some very specific diet, then when you send out the notification for that they've been invited for dinner, then I would leave it up to them to contact you to say, hey, I am now a vegan or I am now a vegetarian, and I was just wondering if you would have if there's going to be anything on your menu that I can eat. And then you can, open the conversation, and you as a host can decide if maybe you want to prepare one vegan dish, or if you will allow that person to bring their own vegan dish.
Mia, is that something that you run into often also?
I do. I run into it frequently. Just, more people are not superficially gluten intolerant. They're actually gluten intolerant or dairy intolerant now. And so just as a host, I always put it on the invitation. Please let me know if you have any dietary restrictions for, holiday parties for clients. I always tell them and recommend they put that in their invitations as well. And then when I'm hosting an event personally, I just automatically on the menu have some vegan options that anyone would eat. So, salsa, hummus, things like that all guests will usually eat. And then I just include it automatically on the menu so that I can avoid
having that as an issue. Because I was going to ask if you're doing like a cocktail party or pass around more hors d'oeuvres as opposed to a sit down dinner. The key then would be the variety in what you choose.
Yes.
That's what I usually do, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Lee asked the question, what are some of the newer traditions that people are embracing? Mia?
Signature cocktails. I think a way to cut down on Uncle Joe getting really, really excited and needing an Uber home. Guests over serving themselves because they're so excited to be out. Limiting, instead of having a full bar, having a signature cocktail. There's some really great things you can find on Pinterest, on, you Google fun holiday cocktails, epicurious.com has them. A good winter sangria with pears and cranberries and rosemary, something like that. I think that's a newer tradition that people are really embracing. And it's a fun festive concept. That way you can have one bourbon cocktail, how much bourbon you've put in it. And that's often helpful with the budget and people over serving themselves.
And you can control it that way. Wow, that's interesting.
Absolutely.
That's great. What about you, Monica? Anything else, any other newer traditions people are embracing?
I just think, like Mia said, some of the themed meals or moving away from the traditional turkey and dressing Thanksgiving dinner. Maybe, deciding that this year we're going to maybe have Italian food for Thanksgiving instead of regular turkey and dressing. And,
there's some people think that's like sacrilege. How dare you not have the regular Thanksgiving dinner?
My father. My father.
But a lot of people really are moving towards other alternatives. Because the whole idea is to gather together and enjoy one another, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Monica, I'm going to ask you this because I always get tripped up. And as many, as I call them, rubber chicken dinners as I go to, in terms of formal dinners out, in various capacities, I always still have to really look at the table to figure out which one is my bread plate and which one is my water. Don't you have in there a saying or something that I think we talked about this once, where that you can always determine where your bread plate is, because if you mess it up, it messes up the whole table.
Exactly. Well, they always say, if in doubt, especially at a formal event or anything, follow the host.
So, well, okay, but say, for instance, you're at a gala, and there is no host. I mean, there are just 10 people sitting around the table.
Okay.
How do you decide after you sit down, and they start passing the bread around, and you're the first one to get the bread? Which plate do you use? Is it to the left, to the right?
It's going to be to your left because your glasses are going to be on your right. And your bread plate is typically to the left.
To the left. Okay. All right. Because people have been very casual since we've all been locked in at home, and now having to get back to a full formal setting. You have to remember you start from the outside and work your way in. Correct?
Yes, correct.
Mia,
I also always just recommend you can Google it right before. If it's something that makes you nervous before you go to a gala, Google it. Just say proper place setting, and it'll pop right up. Our steward has a little diagram. You can click on the images, and say, okay, I got it. We're good to go. And now I'm ready for the gala.
Oh,
Just
that is
Google it.
priceless. That is a great idea. I never really thought about that.
Well, yeah.
That's
Yeah,
very interesting.
Yeah, because people have their phones with them all the time. And, I mean, that even works, for instance, if you're at an event and there is a dish being served that you're not familiar with, you can always Google it to find out maybe what the ingredients are in case you may be allergic to something in the dish or something like that, or you've never heard of it. You know, someone may be serving she crab soup and you have no clue what a she crab is.
So what if you are sitting at a particularly an intimate gathering, and someone serves something that you just truly don't like to eat? I mean, I'm assuming you don't say anything about it, but do you just eat around it? You know, how do you handle that?
Well, there's not really anything that I don't like to eat, so I don't have an answer for that. Just kidding. So I'll usually just cut it once or twice and just move it over in a couple of places so it seems like I've tried it, and then I'll politely sit and wait for the next course.
Got you. Okay. Let's see. We have another question from Facebook. It says, is it okay to ask the host when dinner will be ready if they invited you to a 4:00 meal and it's after 6, but no food has been served?
Definitely.
Wow.
So if that happens, then clearly the host has not planned the meal properly. Is that right?
I think you ask if they need assistance with anything, because clearly something has gone awry in the kitchen.
Yes. So what is the proper amount of time? If you invite people, say dinner is we're inviting you over at 4:00 for a sit down dinner. What is the proper time to serve? 30 minutes later, 15?
I usually allocate for a smaller event. I usually allocate 30 to 45 minutes for, cocktails, light hors d'oeuvres, if you have a cheese spread or a charcuterie spread. Mm-hmm. And for larger events, about 45 minutes to an hour prior to dinner when guests arrive.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. And charcuterie boards, speaking of that, Monica, are very, very popular now. Are there some suggestions you have for people if they want to try to build their own?
The easiest way to build your own is to go to trusty dusty YouTube or Pinterest, and there is a video out there that can have you assembling a wonderful charcuterie board in less than 30 minutes.
Yeah. And Mia, are those very, very popular in terms of what people are serving?
They really are. I think it's something easy that's really beautiful. You can create a massive spread and make it look really interesting with charcuterie boards. There are several places locally that actually specialize in charcuterie boards right now in Virginia Beach and Norfolk, and I think they're amazing.
Yeah. So, is it polite? What is the if you aren't feeling comfortable yet, because not everybody is comfortable yet with gathering around other people and being out, what's the polite way to say, thank you for the invitation, but no? In other words, should you get into the reasons why you're not going to show up, or should you just say politely, I appreciate it, but I'm not available? Monica.
Again, it depends upon how well you know the person. I mean, if you know the person pretty well, you can just say, I'm not comfortable in an environment with, X amount of people. Because a lot of times when you invite people to gatherings, one of the first questions they're going to ask is how many people are you're expecting? Mm-hmm. And from there, they can determine whether or not they want to be in that group.
Mm-hmm. So what if it's a work type situation, where you've never been to the home before, and they've invited you because you're the new vice president who just joined the company, kind of a thing? I mean, is it still okay to say no, even though you're kind of expected because you're a leader within the business?
I'll pass it off to Mia, because I don't have that experience being an owner of my own business.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I think if you're in that kind of situation, I think that, you could easily say, I can go for a few minutes at the beginning, or let people know and let your entire team know, you know me, I'm not quite as comfortable as everybody else gathering together. I hope you all have a wonderful time. I wish I could be there next year. It might be even better. I think still having that moment where you allow yourself to feel comfortable or not, and stating that, I think everybody will respect that.
So even if you're gathering with family and everybody knows everybody and so forth, is there still a modicum of etiquette expected from you in terms of your behavior?
Because of COVID?
Yeah, because of COVID or because of just period. I mean, because sometimes people think because I'm around family, I don't have to be polite. Is that true?
That's definitely not true. You might not get invited back.
Not true. That is not true at all. I think that there's always a level of etiquette. There's always things that you do and don't say around family, no matter who it is, no matter how close they are. I think there still is etiquette. You're still respecting, your family and friends, and I think there is always a level of etiquette.
Shouldn't go too far. Another question from our Facebook page. They want to know, should dessert be put out right after the meal is served, or is there a certain amount of time that you should wait to serve dessert? Should you space it out, in other words? Start with you, Monica.
I think that most people have a dessert table. So it should be out so that if once people finish their dinner, if they want to move on over to dessert, they can do that.
Okay. And if you're doing a seated meal and everything's being served, should you wait, Mia, or just bring it out right away?
I think there's a little bit of a grace period to allow people time to get a after dinner cocktail or aperitif. If they want coffee, allow their food to settle. Generally, I think there's about a 10 to 15 minute wait, not much longer than that, between dessert for people to do that.
Mm-hmm. So, and how long should you stay? When is it polite to go home? I mean, because, some people, now it's one thing, and I'm talking about in an environment where you've been formally invited to someone's home. It's not you're not going to hang out at your best friend's house. I'm just talking about a more formal type event that you've been invited to. You've had your cocktails, you've had dinner, you've had your dessert. People are politely speaking, and talking to each other. When should you leave? Mia, start with you.
I never like to be the first to leave, but then I don't like to linger depending on who it is. So I usually wait until about half of the guests are gone, and then I'll just make my way out as well. As far as the time, if everybody's staying and you're ready to go, I think about 30, 45 minutes to formal dinner. If people are having drinks afterward and you want to stay, one or two, so you don't get too excited. But I usually wait until about half of the guests are gone to leave. Okay.
And Monica, what would you say? How long do you stay?
I would say, you read the crowd. And, because a lot of times people have guests that are like relatives and things that are staying in their home. And if you're not one of those people, then I would say, like as Mia said, 35, 40 minutes, or unless, somebody, they say, well, let's stay, you guys stay and watch the football game, or stay and watch the parade, or maybe even stay and play a game of cards or something shortly thereafter, because it depends on how late in the evening it is as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are, in terms of, we talked about leaving, but also, should you arrive prior to the time that is on the invitation? So if someone says we are invited starting at 4, should you show up at 4:15?
15 minutes early is not that bad. Yeah.
No.
So you should not, one says yes, one says no. Do not ever show up early.
I think that it makes me anxious when people show up to any event early. I think if it says 4 o'clock, show up at 4:01. If it says 4 o'clock, show up at 3:59. I think, as a host, you're always getting things together last minute. And when the doorbell rings for a 4 o'clock event at 3:40, you're just you're putting your finishing touches on things. So I say it's not necessary unless it's your best friend and, they might need some help. With the finishing touches, I've never show up early to an event, but that's also my profession.
Got you. Okay. All right. We got about 4 minutes left. Someone wants to know what is the etiquette for leaving? Do you speak to your host only and say thank you, or are you supposed to say goodbye to everybody? Monica, let's start with you.
I would say thank you to the host and speak to the people that are in the immediate room. I don't necessarily think that you need to go all through the house to say, if people are not still centrally located, to find everyone in every nook and cranny to say hi. But if there are people there that you connected with and you want to say goodbye, that's a good thing to do.
That's the thing to do. Okay. Mia, you agree with that?
Yeah, the same.
Okay. All right. So in the last 3 minutes, I want you guys to give our audience some pieces of advice if they are going to be hosting a gathering. What is something you want to tell them to encourage them? Because I think the biggest fear of every host is that nobody's going to show up. That you put everything together and then you have to wait for everybody to show up. So just give us some advice. Mia, let's start with you.
Advice on people showing up, I think asking for an RSVP and following up with people. I think the age of digital invitations has kind of made it more nerve-wracking to host an event, because you're like, I don't know who's showing up, but it's your responsibility to make sure if your guests are coming. So just following up with people, saying, hey, are you still planning on coming on Saturday? Or I haven't heard from you. Mm-hmm. Are you planning on coming? Following up, and then it kind of touches that guest. And then just a general word of advice if you're hosting an event. Mm-hmm. I always like an icebreaker for people who don't know each other. I always have people find one person you don't know and come up with a great holiday drink recipe. We'll announce the winner at the end. Like something quick, you find someone, you chit chat for a second, and it's an easy icebreaker for people who haven't met some of the other guests.
All right. That's Mia Byrd, founder and creative director of Byrdhouse Creatives. Thank you so very much, Mia. And Monica, you've got 1 minute left.
I would just basically tell people to enjoy themselves. Don't overthink the situation. Everything is going to work out, and you can wing it and have a great time mixing and mingling with the people that you've invited.
And you should plan to have a good time with your guests. Isn't that correct? Because sometimes some hosts get so tied up in delivering everything that they never actually have time to enjoy the party.
Exactly.
Absolutely. That is Monica Edwards. She is the owner and innkeeper of Morehead Manor Bed and Breakfast in Durham, North Carolina. Thank you, ladies, so much for joining us. And for all of you out there planning your holiday events, I hope that you've gotten some really good tips, and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Claude McKnight of the group Take 6, and you're listening to Another View.
There's a new sun rising. I can see a new horizon. You keep me realizing you're the biggest part of me.
Welcome back. So hospitals were having a difficult time filling vacant nursing positions before the pandemic. Now, with so many healthcare workers burning out and retiring early, the nursing shortage has reached critical proportions. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, there will be roughly 176,000 RN openings each year for the next decade. Can you believe those statistics? But one local nonprofit is working diligently to introduce more students of color to the nursing profession. Our Lisa Godley gives us an inside look at the Nursing CAP program.
Whether it's a scheduled procedure or an emergency, when you arrive at the hospital, there are dedicated healthcare workers ready to help. And when it comes to nurses, many are working extra hours, some even double shifts to cover the gap that is only widening as their colleagues retire or simply decide they've had enough. Regina McKinney is one of those dedicated professionals. As an advanced practice registered nurse, She's had an opportunity to mentor and speak to young people about her profession. And when she was out there, she noticed something.
I just didn't see students that looked like me, so I had an interest in what was keeping these minority students from nursing. So that was one of the reasons why we developed Nursing Cap Incorporated.
That was 2013. Over the last 8 years, Nursing Cap has touched the lives of hundreds of middle and high school students, tutoring them in the courses they'll need, training them with equipment like blood pressure monitors and stethoscopes, and introducing them to medical professionals who'll share their day-to-day reality and who don't mind sharing the road they traveled to get there.
So I worked as a pharmacy cashier first, and then I did a pharmacy technician, and then I went back to pharmacy school and graduated in 2018. After pharmacy school, I did a pharmacy residency, which was ridiculously competitive.
We have a real concern regarding a focus on those middle school years because we realize that those are the most formative years for students to have an interest in these careers. And we know that if we can get them early on to develop science and math concepts, then they will have a greater chance to be successful in nursing and healthcare careers in general.
Maya Miltier entered the program when she was 15. Reflecting back, she says she really enjoyed the college tours that Nursing Cap provided.
But I liked Columbia University. They were very friendly. I also went to Emory College, Clark, Spelman. We got to go on tours. And I liked different programs they have for medical students, and I liked how they accommodate you.
She's now 19, attending Tidewater Community College with her sights set on entering the nursing program at ODU or NSU.
What inspired me to be a nurse was when this lady, she came in and she was a nurse navigator, and I liked hearing about her career, and she told us about what they do daily, takes control of all of the patient's files and everything. They basically are like head of the nurses. So that kind of inspired me to be a nurse.
And while the pandemic has caused some nurses to call it quits earlier than experts predicted, it hasn't swayed the majority of Nursing Cap program participants.
Believe it or not, they still want to go into nursing. They're telling us that they really know that nurses really have been the backbone of the healthcare system.
A system that is hungry for nurses of color.
We're going to definitely need diverse healthcare professionals to take care of the increased minority population that we have. As a nurse anesthetist, when I see patients that are African American and I tell them that I'm going to be with them during their surgery, they are better able to relate to me. They could be stressed about having this surgery, and then all of a sudden when I tell them that I'm going to be with them throughout the surgery until they wake up, that lessens their anxiety about going under and having surgery. I definitely know that having a diverse healthcare workforce, doctors, pharmacists, dentists, and other healthcare providers can certainly help with the healthcare disparities that exist.
For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
And if you'd like to know more about Nursing Cap, Inc., you can log on to their website at nursingcap.org. So some good, solid, entertaining, and etiquette advice on today's show. Do me a favor and share this show with a friend. You can find the podcast for this show and all of our shows at anotherviewradio.org. And while you're there, please sign up for our eView newsletter. It's a once-a-week reminder of upcoming shows. We're on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter at Barbara Ham Lee. It's never too late to get your shots. Let's get protected so we can keep ourselves and our loved ones safe now and throughout the holidays. The pandemic, unfortunately, it's still not over, folks. So be safe. Go and get your shots. And if it's time for your booster, make sure you go and get that booster shot too. The Another View crew is off next week to enjoy the Thanksgiving holiday. We are so grateful for your support of our program. On behalf of Lisa, Todd, myself, and Dr. Barry Graham, thank you for being such loyal listeners. Our theme music is an original composition created especially for Another View by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Todd Washburn is our audio engineer, and Dr. Barry Graham answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone, and we'll get together again in 2 weeks for Another View.
Support comes from Thomas Nelson Community College, now becoming Virginia Peninsula Community College, the first choice to start a career. Gain skills in fields like cybersecurity and education. More at tncc.edu.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, carrying out your charitable wishes forever, whether it's helping shelter animals, feeding the homeless, enhancing the arts, or supporting students. Learn more at leaveabequest.org.